I'm going to start. I'll be giving the first part of the presentation. Welcome and housekeeping. Just quickly, the outline, we're going to go over air quality in the valley, just a little bit of why we're doing the eTRIP rule, what kind of the current status and the current situation in the valley is, and why we have to do what we have to do. What is the eTRIP rule and how it involves you all. The basic, and then the presentation will be taken over by Jeffrey Scott Advertising. They're our agency of record, and they are experts in communication, and they'll be doing kind of the second half of the presentation. Then we'll talk a little bit about basics of good communication, engaging employees, some tools, including the tools that are in the eTRIP guidelines. We'll then have Q&A, and then during the wrap-up, any feedback suggestions you guys might have. Next slide. Air quality in the valley. We'll just jump right on into this. If you don't know, you are in a office of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Some of you are familiar with us because you are one of our existing regulated sources. For better or worse, you may or may not have had a relationship with us for the past several years. We try and make that relationship as painless as possible, but we do know that sometimes we're not the favorite people to be coming into your offices. If you have not been regulated in the past, you may not be familiar with the Valley Air District. We are one of 3 different levels of agencies who have responsibility for air quality in the San Joaquin Valley. There is the EPA. They're in charge of things like interstate truck travel, fuel standards, locomotives, airplanes. There then, secondary is the California Air Resources Board. They also deal with mobile sources, cars and trucks to a certain extent. Then you have us, we're the local air district. And in our case, we're an 8-county air district. We go all the way down to Kern County in the south, that is to say the Valley Air Basin portion of Kern County, and then up to Stanislaus and San Joaquin counties in the north. We are governed by a 15-member governing board that includes 13 elected officials. We have 8 board of supervisors from each of the 8 counties we represent. We then have 5 council people from cities in the valley, and then we have 2 governor appointees. One has to be a scientific expert in air quality. Currently, that position is held by a professor from UC Merced. We also have an MD, and that position is open. It was held by Dr. Tellis until he stepped off our board a few months ago. Our main focus is to put plans together that actually are the ingredients to get us into attainment for the federal standards, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we regulate a whole variety of sources. Some of you are aware because you have a long history with us. That includes factories, it includes manufacturing facilities, it includes agriculture, energy plants, a whole variety of things throughout the valley. Next slide. Why we're here, for better or worse, I think the valley is one of the most beautiful places in the world to live on a clean air day. Unfortunately, we have ideal conditions. Most of you have already heard this. We're a bowl. We're surrounded by mountains on virtually all sides. We have meteorological conditions that make trapping and creating pollution very easy for us to do. It's not that we create a disproportionate amount of pollution. It's that we have very few days when that pollution easily disperses out of the valley. This is a picture of the valley on one of those foggy winter days, and it just shows you the bowl that we live in. We also have a lot of unemployment and a lot of poverty, and those 2 things mean that investment in things like newer vehicles may not come as easy to us as they do to perhaps an area where their demographics are much wealthier than you find here in the valley. We also have a high population growth rate, and then we have 2 of the major West Coast north-south thoroughfares in Highway 99 and Interstate 5. They're major transportation arteries, and they carry most of the goods that come into the Port of Los Angeles, the Port of Oakland, the Port of Long Beach, and even as far up as the ports in Oregon and the state of Washington. A lot of that truck traffic moves up and down through the valley. Often the most they might do is they stop over in Kettleman City for services. Next slide. Having said that, our challenges are unmatched, but we really have had some great successes. And my boss, Sayed Sedruddin, will tell you, if you ask him, that it really has been because of the involvement of the business community. We have seen huge investment, and we have, in this valley, some of the most technologically advanced industries operating in the United States and really the world today. It has not come without cost. We are very aware of that, and we really do honestly try to come and sit at the table and work with our business partners as much as we possibly can to come to rules and regulations that are palatable to them. We know that it is no fun being regulated. We fully understand that. But we do have certain goals that we have to meet, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But because of that investment by business and industry, we actually have seen an 80% reduction in our stationary source emissions. These are emissions from things like agriculture, factories, manufacturing facilities, energy plants, those big things that don't move around that emit pollution. They have become significantly cleaner in the last 20 years. We've seen the cleanest winter on record was last year, and in spite of what you may have read in the paper this morning, we really have had this summer be one of the cleanest summers on record. Even anecdotally, I've had a lot of people say to me, you know, I was amazed that in the middle of July there was actually some days when I could see the mountains. So we have made great progress in cleaning up air quality in the valley, and it really has come through lots of effort, hard work, and investment by our business community. We're now to the point that the industrial sources alone can no longer, we've squeezed all the blood we can from that turnip and can no longer bear all of the burden of reducing those emissions. And that's kind of how the eTRIP rule came about, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Next slide. This is just a graph showing that in spite of huge population growth, we really have seen both our NOx, our nitrogen oxide, and our VOCs, our volatile organic compounds. Both of those are ingredients that help make our summer ozone problem and our winter particulate matter problem. Both of those pollutants have dropped even though our population is increasing. And our vehicle miles traveled is almost a 2-to-1 ratio towards that population increase. For every new person in the valley, we're seeing at least 2 more miles being driven. And that's because as a society in general, just not here in the valley, but we're driving farther and families have more cars per person. So used to be 50 years ago, if you had four people in your family, you had 1 car. Now it's not uncommon if you have 4 people in your family and 2 of those people are teenagers, you could even have 4 cars in your family. Next slide, please. This is just a graph. The next 3 or 4 are just a graphic outline of air quality and some of the successes that we've had over the past few years. You can see that when it comes to 8-hour ozone, that's one of the measurements, the summertime measurement. The other is the 1-hour ozone standard. You can see that we are slowly decreasing the number of 8-hour ozone exceedances. And then when it comes to the wintertime air quality, we're seeing more good days where air quality is in the green air quality index level and fewer unhealthy days. And this is valley-wide, but the trends are the same for any county that you're looking at. Next slide. These are just side-by-side comparisons of the amount of ozone that we had, 8-hour ozone levels in 1995 versus 2005. And what you see if you look at the graph on the right, the hot spots still continue to be the southern part of the San Joaquin Valley. And then there's that little orange spot that's kind of there all by itself in Fresno County, and that is, of course, the city of Fresno. What we're finding is that as the entire valley cleans up, the urban areas are not cleaning up as quickly as the rest of the valley. And what that means is it's becoming less of an industrial pollution issue. As I mentioned, a lot of those industries have gotten cleaner, and more of an individual public, how we drive, where we drive, the behaviors we engage in on a daily basis. So you see that those urban centers actually are beginning to be our hotspots for pollution. Next slide, please. This talks about our 1-hour ozone standard, and some of you may have heard the last month or so we've had air alerts. The reason that we've had these air alerts is that we, back in 1997, submitted a plan to the federal government to meet the 1-hour ozone standard by 2010. And we showed significant progress. As you can see, if this graph even went back about 5 more years, in 1996, we had 56 days when we failed to meet the 1-hour ozone standard. In 2010, we had 7. Unfortunately, the federal government told us that we needed to have 0 by 2010. And since we did not meet the deadline that they required of us, it triggered what's called Section 185 of the Clean Air Act, and it is a $29 million penalty on the San Joaquin Valley. You may have heard about this or read about this in the news. It is going to be shared by both the business community and by anyone driving. As I mentioned, passenger vehicles, drivers, cars contribute a significant amount to our pollution. So $12 additional per year will be tacked on to people's DMV registration fees. And I will say that this issue was not taken lightly by our board. Our board, they tend to be very cognizant and aware of not so much that it's $12. I think if it had been $1, they would have really had a difficult time with it. But the reason for that is we had a few choices, and the board looked at each of them. The first thing they looked at was do nothing. What if we just said, federal government, we're not paying your fee, do nothing? What would happen in that case is that the federal government would invoice our larger industries. There are certain industries already in the valley that are considered to be Title V industries. Some of you may work for a company that's a Title V industry. Those industries, even if they had invested millions of dollars, would be carrying the 100% of the financial burden for that $29 million fee. And our board looked at that and said, we don't want the federal government invoicing those companies. Primary reason is because if they do that, then the money goes back to the federal treasury and we will never see it again. Second option was, well, let's invoice those businesses ourselves. We will turn 100% of those funds around through our grants program, which is a very robust program, and give that money back to the community in a variety of different ways, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. Our board thought that was a little bit better scenario, but they really didn't feel like those industries should carry 100% of the burden when a big chunk of the pollution that triggers those 1-hour ozone exceedances come from cars and trucks driving around this valley. So they went with option 3, to split it. Businesses will pay part of that $29 million, and everyone that drives a car, myself included, will pay an additional $12 a year. Having said that, they then asked us to do 2 things. One was to work with the federal government to see if we couldn't get some flexibility put into that section of the Clean Air Act. And I say that because right now there's no recognition for progress made. We made tremendous progress in cleaning up our air quality over the past about 20 years. But since we were so close and we failed, we fail. You either pass or you fail. There's no accounting for progress made. So we are working, fortunately for those of you down south, you might be familiar, there's a congressman by the name of Kevin McCarthy, who's the majority whip in the House right now, and we have his ear and we're talking to him to see if we can't put some flexibility into that. It is always the top of our mind to not economically burden businesses in the valley in such a way that we run them out of the valley. That would be the worst thing that we could possibly do. So we really are working on one side to see if some flexibility can be put into the Clean Air Act. And then on the other side, the Air Alert program was born. We wanted to make sure people were aware of those days when we were at risk for exceeding that 1-hour violation, and to let them know that their behavior on that day may or may not contribute. If they stay inside, they're going to, I guess, help us avoid a 1-hour exceedance because they didn't drive so much that day. Or if they're one of those people that are going to drive all around and put, hundreds of miles on their car that day that maybe could have been put off a few days, then they will be helping to see that exceedance, and we're hoping that they'll understand that there's a connection there between individual behavior and whether or not we come into attainment. The 1-hour ozone season pretty much just ended, and I will tell you this year we had 4 days when we exceeded the standard. The earliest that we can come into compliance for the 1-hour ozone standard is 2013, and we're doing everything we can to get into compliance for the 1-hour ozone standard. And I wanted to just take a minute because that's been in the press a lot, and I'm sure write down your questions. If you have questions on that, I'll be certain to answer them at the end of the presentation. Next slide. These are PM2 violations, PM2.5 violations. It's just another representation of that graph I showed you a little bit earlier. It's basically that we are seeing more good days and fewer poor air quality days. Next slide. Why are business and public partners so important to us? Next slide. Partially, I've already mentioned that our industrial sources have invested billions of dollars, literally, in cleaning up and getting us the 80% reductions that we've already seen. Unfortunately, there are new federal standards for air quality that are coming that are actually beginning to reach the valley's natural background levels. That is, if we took all the people and all the industry out of the valley, there's a certain natural amount of pollution, especially when you're looking at summertime, that just exists here. So the federal standards that we're looking at are incredibly tough. And whenever my boss is giving this presentation, he says, jokingly, with his friend down in the oil industry, that in order to get the additional reductions that we need, he says, you know, we basically have to outlaw fossil fuels. We don't have the authority to do that. We don't think that that's really what can be done, but we are looking to get as close to that as possible. We need those non-traditional industrial sources to get on board with us, and we're working with everyone from Rotary clubs to faith-based communities to businesses like yours, to the smaller businesses that might be just 3 or 4 individuals, to schools, to just, you know, moms and dads, to kids, everywhere we can to get them to understand that how they live their life in the valley makes a difference in what kind of air quality that we have. We really are encouraging alternative, innovative, new measures, and we actually have a grants program that I'll talk a little bit about. We're looking at partnerships with businesses, municipalities, and individuals. It's actually right here. It says grants. It should be grants. Grants for businesses. If you are not familiar with our grants program, I want to take 2 minutes and let you know that our grant program probably has something that you could take advantage of. From an individual standpoint, we've got electric lawnmowers. We usually in April have an electric lawnmower program. If you have a gas-powered lawnmower, you can turn it in and get a huge discount on electric lawnmower. This past year, the lawnmowers got as cheap as, I think, $100, $150 for what was a $350 or $450 electric lawnmower. If you have an old wood stove in your home, or an open hearth fireplace in your home, and you want to retrofit it and put a gas fireplace in your home or a gas stove in your home, we have money to help you do that. That's on the smaller end. On the larger end, we have money to retrofit school buses. If your child goes to a school and they have older school buses, we have money to help retrofit those school buses. We have a public benefits grant that looks at everything from fleet vehicles to get, you know, if you work with, if you have a small fleet with in your office, we can look at getting you Prius vehicles, electric vehicles, clean vehicles into your fleet. One example is that we just entered into a partnership with UPS to get 50 electric UPS trucks up in the northern region of the valley. So we have money for ag irrigation pumps. We have money for diesel trucks. We have money for e-commerce. If you have a business and you want to do some type of online sales, purchasing type of web portal, we have money to help you do that. Bike infrastructure, a whole variety of things. And that's all on our website. You can call us directly. There'll be more information that we can give you on that. Really, it is about us bringing money into the valley to incentivize people making changes that will improve our air quality. And we understand that the carrot approach is a much better strategy whenever we can to get people to make these changes. Public participation, we cannot reach our clean air goals without general members of the public beginning to understand. And we've been fortunate in that we do have a lot of members of the public that understand already. And that is that, you know, a lot of people, unfortunately, have health problems that are related to our poor air quality. The reason that we're in this situation is because we have pollution and it is detrimental to the public health. Those folks are usually an easy sell. Those folks are more than happy to look into alternative transportation, riding their bicycle, investing in an electric lawnmower. But then we have a whole bunch of folks that don't really like the poor air quality in the valley, that really wish it was cleaner, and they maybe have thought once or twice about doing something personally to change their behavior, but they just don't exactly know how to do it. And we're really starting to target those people. The Healthier Living Initiative is our program which does that. And it is basically a partner program where folks can sign up to learn more about air quality, to get tools to help engage their constituents, their congregation, their employees, their club members in improving air quality in the valley. So public participation is our next kind of the low-hanging fruit is that the public engages in, and we're really working to get those individuals to get more involved. Next slide. The kicker of all this, and I've mentioned some of this, if we don't meet the federal standards for air quality, and I will say that the federal government mandates this. They don't say, oh, by the way, you should do these things. They say you must. And we are on the hook. And by we, I don't just mean the Valley Air District. I mean everyone living in the Valley is on the hook for us not meeting the federal mandates. And what happens if we don't meet these federal mandates? Well, we get fined that $29 million. That's one example. What will happen if we don't have a plan to come into attainment fairly quickly with that 1 hour standard, and if we can't reach our other standards, there's a de facto ban on new businesses. And really, it's de facto because it doesn't say you can't expand. It doesn't say you can't be a new business in the Valley. It just makes it so difficult and so regulation heavy to do either of those things that no one's really going to want to do it. It will take the burden of regulation that you see now and make it even more cumbersome, and we don't want that to happen. The next thing that happens is it's a loss of federal highway funds. So the ability for us to keep our highways in good shape, those monies get lost if we don't come into attainment under the timelines that we've said we can. And then the one that is probably most disheartening to us is it's a federal takeover, and that's a federal implementation plan is what that stands for. Basically, it means the federal government comes in and takes over all our authority. We no longer would have the authority or the ability to sit down with businesses and say, what's the best way to put this winery rule together? What's the best way to put this boiler rule together? We wouldn't be able to do that. It would be the federal government coming in and saying, this is how it's going to be done. We really, truly, and if you're not sensing this, then please come and talk to us. We really do try to be incredibly accessible to people, to sit down, to talk about how things are done. And really, that's kind of how the menu approach in the eTRIP rule came about. Next slide. Next slide. The eTRIP rule, and some of you were involved, I recognize a few familiar faces in the development of this rule. We were required under state law to develop a rule that looked at alternative transportation in the workplace. It was adopted in December of 2009. The benchmarks or the timelines began this year. It applies to any business that's in it applies to any city with a population of at least 10,000 people, or at least 50% of all employees work at least half-time, basically. So you may wonder, well, why isn't my dry cleaner a part of eTRIP? Really, we were looking for those businesses, and there's some more language in the rule about eligible employees, but we were looking for those businesses who had a stable workplace population where enough people all went to one central place, usually I think it's between 6 and 10 in the morning. 6 and 10, does that sound right? I think it is 6 and 10. And we're leaving around the same time at the end of the day, because that would be conducive to alternative transportation. The whole point of it is to encourage employees to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. You as a business put together an eTRIP plan. Some of you, most of you have already done this. It's really just a menu of different things that you're going to adopt in your workplace that will encourage folks to engage in alternative transportation. And the most important thing, I think, for all of you is by being here today, first of all, be certain to sign in. If you have not signed in, please do so. We have no way to know that you were here if you have not signed in. I just want to repeat that one more time. Be certain to sign in. We will be sending your certificate of completion to whatever name and address is listed on the sign-in sheet. If you do not sign in, we do not know you were here. So sign in. And by attending this marketing course, you have earned 3 points towards phase 1 of your eTRIP. And I think, next slide, yep, we're to the basics of communication. I'm going to switch over. Jackie's going to switch over, one of the two. Now I'm turning it over to folks who are experts in communication in general, and they're just going to talk to you. Our hope is that after the next, 30, 45 minutes of Jeffrey Scott talking to you, that not only will you have some tools about how to engage your employees in alternative transportation measures, but maybe you'll just walk away with some additional knowledge that may help you in other areas of your business or your work. So we're going to get that up, and we'll come right back.
Hi everybody, and welcome again, as Jamie said, and this is the guinea pig version of the presentation, so please share those notes with us. We're going to go through some communication tips. When we're done with this and you do share your feedback, let us know sort of what you think, if this was a baseline and things you already knew and reinforced, or if you had never heard this information before, or if this is way, too easy and you need it to be pumped up a little bit. That would be really helpful for us. I'm Jennifer Saida. I'm the Director of Client Strategies at Jeffrey Scott.
And I'm Sarah Gunlin. I'm Director of Public Relations at Jeffrey Scott.
We're kind of Tweedledee and Tweedledee today, so neither of us wants to be Tweedledum. So we're going to keep kind of bouncing back and forth, so hopefully everyone can hear us. And if you want to have any questions, go ahead and hold them to the end, and Jamie will probably come back up as well. Should I click, or you're going to click for me? Let me see if I can click. All right, so with communication, when you talk about organizational communications, we try to talk to the most important people, and by doing that, we try to separate out who we want to talk to, and then we can identify different channels for which to talk to them with. So when you talk about your publics, you talk about everyone that you want to talk to, two big categories that we usually break it down into is internal and external. External would be anybody that you want to speak to that's important to your organization that is not part of the organization already. And then internal is obviously the people that are most important to your organization, which is your stockholders, it can be business associates, and then most importantly your employees. And employees, you want to talk to them in different ways. You're going to talk to your CEO a little bit different than you're going to talk to your middle management. You're going to talk to your middle management a little different than your regular employees. And today, Sarah and I's hope is to give you some different tools on different ways to talk to those groups within your internal organization. Target audience. This is a simple one. I'm going to read you the exact definition that you can get from Wikipedia, you can get from any time you Google target audience. It's a specific group of people within a target market to which our message is directed to. So you want to think of it like a bullseye, and you want to take all these different circles, and the person you want to talk to that's the most important is in the middle of the circle, that bullseye. And we want to give you some tips today on how to teach the people that are the most important to you about this eTRIP program. When you're putting together your program, your implementation program, you want to think about who that most important center target is, and what ways are you going to talk to them. Do they like to be communicated with via email? Do they like to have presentations? How regularly do we need to talk to these people to make sure that they're hearing our message and that they're understanding it? What messages are we going to say to them that resonate the most? Managing internal communications. The most important thing is understanding who you're talking to. So when you're talking to your folks, you want to make sure that you know what's important to them. What is it that's going to be a hot button for them? Why should they care? And also the appropriate channels. As I just said, some people prefer to be communicated with via email. They like to get updates regularly. Some people like a face-to-face meeting, and they don't want to be bothered for a long time. They think it's redundant, and they get more irritated if you keep bothering them. So you need to really think about these different groups of people. Who do we want to talk to? How are we going to talk to them? And what are we going to say? And I think the last one is sharing tasks among communicators. So you can't possibly manage this program completely by yourself. So what you want to do is have a team of people. Maybe it's your management team, and each manager is going to be in charge of this program for their department. But the last thing you want to do is try to take this on all by yourself and manage the entire program alone, because that's only going to set you up for failure. If you spread it across the different departments, each manager probably knows best how to communicate with their staff. So that would be one suggestion. Maybe it's through your management team. Maybe it's through program ambassadors, people that are really happy about this program or more excited. In our office, we call that Jackie. Someone that's going to own this project, their heart's already in it, and maybe you want to put them in charge of it. Click. And the last thing is monitoring your effectiveness. Make sure that you're checking back with people regularly to see if this is effective. Make sure that they understand the plan. See if people are participating. What kind of feedback can you get to improve your program? You should always be reevaluating and improving what you're working on. Key principles to effective internal communications. Starts with effective communication skills, and I think we're taught this from preschool on. The most important part of communicating is listening, finding out what people want, the best ways to get them their answer, and to get it to them in a timely manner. So listening is the most important part and is what you want to focus on when you're trying to put your plan together. Be clear, be concise, and then the last one is have an answer. As this program starts, Jamie just went through a lot of different information, a lot of different rules, different penalties, and it's kind of confusing. You may not have all of the answers at your fingertips, but make sure you let your people in your office know that you will get the information and you will get back to them. Make sure you get back to them in a timely manner. You don't have to have all the answers, but know where you can go to get them and know how to get back to somebody in a timely fashion so that you're always the person that's the expert in the office for your program. And now, your turn.
My turn.
Yeah.
So how do we actually talk to these different groups? What we would recommend is segment them out as far as who you want to talk to based on their roles or position within your company. So think of it more of a pyramid, if you will. So at the top, is the smallest, so that would probably be the CEO, the person, the least amount of people. The next one would be upper management, followed by middle management, and then employees. This may look different for your organization, but we just took a basic pyramid look to it. So segment those different audiences out. And within those audiences, once you kind of roll out with the program and your plan, there may be certain people that are early adopters. They want it. They enjoy it. They like participating. We actually put a little bit of an asterisk to them as program ambassadors. If there's people out there that do that, that would be an extra effort for those people. Ask them to be more involved. Have them be more involved in the process. They can be your advocate, that you don't have to bear this all on your own. They can get more rally support for you, if you will. Next is once you segment out your audiences, then you would create a communication. So there's different ways of communicating. There's downward communication and upward communication. The whole process of the communication is to make it not feel like a push down, you have to. We want to create a teamwork type of a feel that people want to be involved. So for the downward communication of how to alleviate that, you make sure everyone receives a copy of the program. Everyone in your organization should know that this is happening and that they're all in the loop. Hold regular management meetings. Hold regular management meetings so that everyone's in the loop and it provides an outlet for feedback and to further improve the program. Share updates or any changes. As you get feedback from employees or the middle management or your ambassadors, make sure that you take that up to the top so that then we can infiltrate all of the different ideas down. Then also, as you roll up the program, hopefully you'll have unique stories to tell. Regularly celebrate major accomplishments. If someone did something outside of the box or came up with an idea, applaud them and give them recognition for it, and hopefully that'll inspire other people to do the same. Now for upward communication, ensure that all supervisors meet with employees regularly. As Jennifer was saying, just that constant the way you communicate, you just have to make sure that you continue to do so. It's not just roll out the program and see you in 6 months. So just make sure that you continue to have that open communication. And an outlet to do that is maybe not make something special for it, just wrap it into existing management or staff meetings that you have to solicit the feedback that you need to improve the program and make it more of a viable thing for your company. And then the last and probably the most important thing is make sure that you act on the feedback. If you're soliciting the information, then make sure that you have the means to do the closest that you can to making that come true. Okay, so, yeah. Does anybody know what with them means? Yeah, okay, that was very good. So what's in it for me? Whether, Jennifer and I would deal with the media a lot. That's pretty much a lot of the communication when we train, that's what it's focused on. You have to always think about your audience and what are they going to think. No matter what you say, their automatic response is probably going to be, what's in it for me? Why are you even telling me this? Why do I have to do this? So just always keep that in your mind, and when you're talking, that will also help you develop key messages for these different groups. So for the next one would be key messages and how to do so. So the purpose is to just brand the program. You need to tell them what it is. And you can do that based on how your organization sees fit for the reasons of why you're participating. But to help you out, if you wanted to kind of a framework for that, we use an acronym called SEX, Statement, Evidence, Conclusion, and then SHUSH. It can be shut up if you want, but it's SHUSH for now. So also, I'll go through an example of the Statement, Evidence, Conclusion. But the reason why there's 3 is because we also don't like to give too much information. People remember things in 3s. If you load them up with too much, they're going to absolutely remember nothing that you said. So if you can kind of break down your information in an orderly fashion in 3s, then that helps. So the statement is obviously, what is it? What is the eTRIP program? The evidence can be why. Why does it exist? And then the conclusion is also a little bit of that call to action. What is going to tie this all together to get that person on my side to be an active participant? And then just be quiet, listen, see what they say, give them a chance to respond, and then hopefully move forward. So the statement, evidence, conclusion will probably look a bit different for all of your organizations, but we did the most broad example that you could just based on the program and the information that you've received so far. So the statement, eTRIP is an incentive program designed to encourage employees to use alternative transportation and ride sharing for their commutes. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Why are we doing this? Each day throughout the San Joaquin Valley, more than 93 million miles are driven, and a significant number of these miles are from work-related single-passenger commutes. The conclusion, eTRIP participation is a crucial part of improving the quality of life for everyone in the Valley, and with your help, and you can insert your company name, is committed to being part of the solution. So again, that conclusion is just to wrap them into the equation, and then it's not possible without them, but it is a very important thing. And then the last is just to be quiet. So just remember that whatever these people hear about the program is coming from you. So that whole branding piece, how are you going to be the mouthpiece for this program and to ultimately gain participation? You?
I think one of the things too about these key messages, it's just sort of a fancy word for how do you say the same thing over and over again. You know, when Sarah and I were kind of working on this presentation and we were asking people around the office, you know, what's this eTRIP program? We'd hear different things, you know, different from when Jackie would tell us or Jamie, and you know, Sarah asked me, what is it? I'm like, I don't know, it's this program, and it's something about points, but I'm not really sure. And so that's what we're trying to avoid, is everyone having their own version of what the eTRIP program is. If we can get, for your organization, a set of speaking points about what it is to define and brand the program, then when you tell your employees and what the eTRIP program is, and they're having lunch and they're talking to somebody else in another department, and they're saying, hey, did you hear about that eTRIP program? That person's thinking the same eTRIP program that they're thinking. They're not thinking, oh yeah, that one program, and I think there's points. You know, everyone needs to be thinking the exact same thing when they hear eTRIP. So that's sort of where that key message thing comes from. It's just sort of saying the same thing over and over, because we all know we're in advertising. You have to say it 20 times for someone to remember it and actually get it right. Okay, so it says marketing plan, but from what Jamie has already kind of said, you guys are calling it your implementation plan. So when you're putting together your implementation plan, and some of you have already done that, and you can go back and just make sure it answers these questions, but when you're trying to get the word out, we try to write every plan that we work on with 3 phases. An objective, which is the what do we want to accomplish, the strategy, how are we going to accomplish it, and then tactics, all the different little ways that are tools to get this message out. So an objective, you want it to try to be specific, measurable, and time-bound. So for this plan, it might be to increase alternative commute program by 15% by the end of 2012. And then your strategy, how you're going to do that is we're going to implement an alternative transportation program at our business. Your tactics are going to be the ways you're going to get that done. You're going to put up a bulletin board that has anybody that wants to ride share or carpool. Everyone can sign up there. You're going to send out regular newsletters. You're going to put together this program for ambassadors for your team. All these different ways are going to be your tactics for how to achieve the goal that you set. make sure when you're putting your plan together that you do have a goal that is measurable. So you can go back later and say, did we meet that goal, and what did we need to do to maybe change it so that we reach it next time, or so we can even improve it. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Have they seen the booklet that's online? I know it's new. Okay. On the Air District site, there is a workbook that gives lots of different ideas and different ways of these tactics that we're talking about, different tools. And so this is just the Valley Air's website, but go ahead and go to that, and then under the eTRIP section, it's the first one on the bottom, and it says new next to it in red. So that's how you'll know it's the one. And it has lots of different ideas that you can implement within your own business for how to meet the demands of the eTRIP program. Now, Sarah and I are going to kind of walk through some of the samples. All of these are listed in this book, so these samples came directly from that book, so please pull it up when you get back to your office because it's a wonderful resource. But Sarah and I are going to kind of talk to you on the ways that these can be effective or not effective. So when you're putting up your sample bulletin board, what are some good things to think of? What are some bad things to keep in mind when you're trying to put it together? Your clicker.
Yeah, so with the sample bulletin board, it doesn't have to be a bulletin board. It can be that common place in your office where people put up information, whether it's buy my kid's candy bar or we're off on Friday or whatever it is. So just that common area that you have where people get information that's different than just an email or a letter. So that would be one place. If you have newsletters that go out, either physical newsletters or electronic newsletters, you can include it in that or make a specific newsletter for the program that can just have more information and maybe direct links online if you have certain elements for that for people to be more engaged. You can create a flyer. And all of these things again are online. You can and those flyers can then be posted in that common area. Maybe it would make more sense for that pyramid that I was talking about earlier to that actually come from the CEO, a letter to everybody, if that makes sense. If it doesn't for your organization, then that's fine too. But sometimes just having that oomph behind it may entice more people to participate. And even ask if you'd want to sample write that for your CEO, and then he or she can edit that down to make it more tailored. Maybe make it more of a fun thing. So rideshare orientation for new employees. If there's maybe bringing lunch into the office one day and telling everybody about the program and making it more of a social type of an event. After all, ride sharing is social. So maybe that's an opportunity for people to figure out based on their commutes how that they can actually ride share. Maybe you can organize something like that. A flyer for alternate transportation incentive. If there is an incentive available for the participants that's either planned or a surprise, obviously that would help. So if your CEO or that upper management agrees that would be something that you could do, then make sure everyone knows about it so that they can take advantage. So those are the things that we just ran through. A couple other ideas is social media. There's no reason why for your organizations you can't tout the fact that you're doing this. It's a good thing for everybody's quality of life in the Valley. If you want to post it on your Facebook page or talk about it on Twitter, ask your employees to talk about their experience and how it's not terrible that some people may think it is. Just tout that you're doing good for your organization. That could also be through a corporate blog. Maybe the CEO does some special blog on your website or a special article on your website about the program. And then also presentation. If it makes sense for your organization, maybe at that luncheon or that orientation to have a presentation that quickly runs through everything, we're more than happy to share just this outline if you wanted to take it and tweak the information so you have a background to play with. We want to make it as easy as possible on you. And then also FAQs or talking points. You'll probably, once you roll out your program, get a lot of the same questions. And so as you develop your key messages, there's going to be things that are thrown at you that maybe you have to research to find out the answer. Just keep a list of those things that even if you wanted to hand out to everyone who came and met with you, and that would maybe alleviate some of those questions. This one? Okay. Tips for communicating effectively. We were also saying that that timely factor of all of this is important, and I know you all are so busy, but maybe if there's a way to create a calendar that keeps you on task and keeps maybe every Monday you do something for the program and it's just built into your everyday or every week work week. um, Look for low cost ways to enhance the program. This can be a bigger conversation with different groups within that pyramid, what makes sense for the organization to not make it more expensive, but to create little incentives for people. Don't offer too many options because it just gets a lot that then people don't really find it that feasible to do it, or it's just overwhelming. It's just a little tip. Add unexpected bonuses. I was talking about the incentives. Maybe it's there's a drawing every month, and the person that participated in the ride sharing gets an extra $50, or a gift certificate to something, or a parking stall for your carpool or your ride share group, or whatever that may be for your organization. It doesn't have to be big, but people love those types of things. Or maybe it's lunch for the office on behalf of, or thank you to this particular person. And all written communication should be short and to the point. We all get those emails that are really, really long, and then you just kind of tune out. So just kind of, once it's all out there and everyone knows what the program is, just little updates here and there would avoid that kind of disgruntled feeling. And then always the most important thing is to continue the evaluation of the program through the feedback, through just what you see and kind of the morale of how people are responding to it. None of this is set in stone, and it can be tailored for your organization.
Yeah. I think that one of the best tools or tip in that list was creating that calendar. So when you do create your implementation plan and you've segmented out who you want to talk to, obviously, mostly with most organizations, coming from the top down is best. So if you can get your CEO behind this program, so if one of your goals is to get the CEO to do a big launch of this program and talk to each of the departments, and then from there you have your different managers that are doing something different to reach out to their employees each month or each week, make a master calendar. So even if you're not the one that is in charge of talking to the XYZ department in May, make sure you're following up with that manager to make sure they did it. Create a master calendar and share it across your team so that you're constantly in check with what's going on and making sure that you're meeting those milestones so that you can reach your goal. I think that's probably the easiest one, because that way you can kind of keep up with everything and you have something that everyone knows by the end of this month, here's where we want to be and here's the tasks that we need to do to get there. Tips for successful print materials. Nearly all of those communication pieces that Sarah shared with you are printed materials, whether it's a flyer or a newsletter. There was the bulletin board. You want to use these tips with any of those communications, whether it's an email or even that bulletin board. Sarah said find the place that is the most common gathering area in your office. But if it's a bulletin board that already exists, don't just throw your flyer up on that. Create a whole separate little area for this rideshare program if that's what you want to use the bulletin board for, because you don't want your message to get lost in the flyers with, like she said, the candy sales and my son's having a car wash and all of that communication. Make your own special spot for this. Use a catchy headline. Trust me, headlines go very far for trying to communicate with people. If you have a catchy headline, they're going to read on and find the information that you want them to get. If you don't have a catchy headline, you've already lost them and they're not going to know what you're trying to tell them. Use no more than 3 typefaces. I've seen so many different newsletters that have, you know, a cursive font here and a big bold block font here, and it gets very confusing to the eye. So make sure you use no more than 3 typefaces. Use your white space effectively. White space is the white space on the page. Don't jam a bunch of information and then leave a big white space at the bottom. Make sure it's easy for the eye to follow in that Z pattern. Use color if possible. I know in our office we're not really allowed to print a lot of stuff in color. It's all black and white. But if you can spare it for your flyers, print out in color as often as you can. It's obviously much more eye-catching. And one message. When Sarah said, when you're using your statement, evidence, conclusion, that conclusion should always be your call to action. What do you want people to do? And make sure that that one message is on every piece that you print, whether it's an email, whether it's communicating verbally, whether it's a poster. Make sure that that last conclusion statement is on there. And I just talked about that. Call to action. You want to make sure that you know exactly and specifically what you want these people to do and that you're having them do it and it's very clear. And check before you burn. What is this?
It's just a sample.
Oh, come on. And don't forget to check before you burn. I see Bakersfield, the gentleman in the front. I saw you yawning, so this one was for you. There's a joke. I see you smiling now. Okay. Again, these are just some additional samples. You see the use of the white space. You see the color. Those big important pull-out, those photos really help to kind of show and create a feeling when you're looking at it. So if you're kind of reading it, it kind of puts you in the state of mind that you want to be in when you're trying to read information, kind of getting people's attention. Oh. And now we've got some comments or questions, or you want to go to questions? Okay, if there's any questions for Jamie on her portion of the presentation, or if you have anything for us, we are available.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a couple of things to what the gal
okay.
said. The first one is the buy-in at the top levels, and I know it's difficult. I get that it's difficult. I get that this is a regulation and that it's difficult. But if you can get buy-in from either your senior management or your CEO, some of you know my boss, Sayed Saturday. I will tell you that he on a regular basis either rides his bike or carpools with that man right over there, Tom Jordan. And it is noticed by all of us. Where he usually parks his car is kind of prominent, and the fact that we know that during an air alert, he is carpooling, he is putting that task on himself to do the right thing. What we're asking the public to do, that he's asking that of himself, and quite frankly, all of his management team. It's noticed. If you can get buy-in from the top levels, and how you get that buy-in, really, first of all, we get it's a regulation. You have to buy in because we're telling you you have to buy in. But if you can go that second step and get buy-in, because we need every, individual in this valley, every Joe and Sally, every, Mary and Bob, whatever it might be, to understand that they're contributing to pollution in this valley, and they need to be doing one or two things differently to clean up this valley. What it means less looking toward industry for even further regulation. And we really need to get people to understand that we're getting now, we have businesses that have been gone through, industries that have gone through 6, 7, 8 rounds of regulations on certain rules and have spent an enormous amount of money. And we really want the public to understand that okay, I've got to do my part. And my background's actually in behavior change. How do you get people to change their behavior? And I hear a lot, you can't get people to do it. And I guarantee you can. If you couldn't, I would be smoking during this entire presentation, and I'd have a bottle of scotch right down here because I hurt my back over the weekend, and it would make it feel much better. Most of us would not even think twice about sunscreen. We wouldn't wear our seatbelts. There's a whole variety of things that we now do that came about through behavior change over time. And you start with people just being in denial. And quite frankly, we're lucky here in the Valley that not a lot of people are in denial. You don't hear very many people out there who say, air quality is great here in the Valley. We have the most, you don't hear that. Most people are aware of the fact that we have poor air quality in the Valley. They really do believe that. They're contemplating what's going on. They know we have poor air quality, and they maybe think about it every once in a while. It's the type of thing that, they've thought, when I go to buy my next car, maybe I am going to look at one that has a lower emissions rating that's better for the environment. I'm going to get a new bicycle. This was me. I'm going to get a new bicycle. And I'm going to try and maybe ride once or twice or 3 times. I actually find carpooling better, although with my back being the way it is, I think the bicycle needs to come back into play here once it gets healthy. So we're thinking about it. Okay, what can I put into my life that will make it easier for me to make these changes? Carpooling is an easy one for me because I actually have someone that I really enjoy carpooling with, and it's, kind of a little bit of a decompression on the way home from work or gearing up on the way into work. The next step is action, and we actually have a lot of people in this valley who do take action on a regular basis about air quality, and those are going to be your program ambassadors. If you already have folks in your business that do these types of things, tap into them. I was amazed. We had a lunchtime workshop here. It was a brown bag it, come in, we set it up VTC, and it was just for people who ride their bikes. We just wanted them to come in and talk about bikes. We spent 15 minutes talking about the different kind of bike shorts you can wear based on whether or not your rump hurts from riding your bike. And people were really engaged and interested in that. And it was probably about 75% of it was our avid bicycle riders, but then we probably had 25% of it that was folks that had never ridden to work before, and they just wanted to maybe figure out if it was even something they could do. It's that simple. It cost the district nothing. We didn't pay for lunch. We just set up the room where they could have this conversation and let them. Two of the guys, and they were guys, two of the guys brought in their bicycles and just talked about some of the different things to look for in a bicycle. It can be something as simple as that. And then the last thing, which was also mentioned by the ladies, is to evaluate it and to re-engage people every year. And really to see, okay, where can we do better? How can we do things differently? Because quite frankly, we get that there are going to be some of you who just go into the eTRIP menu, you're going to get your points, you're going to put it in your file, and in a year you'll pull it back out and you'll get your points as well. I'm not in denial myself about the fact that that's going to happen with some of you, but I really hope that with most of you, you'll think, you know what, I want to plug into that handful of people already in my office who do this, who get this. Maybe they have a child with asthma, maybe they themselves have health problems. If you can tap into those people and connect them with messages coming from the top, you will reach the point where you'll actually have to rein this in, because people get so excited about it and want to do so much and want to get people fired up about bicycle riding or about carpooling. And I will say that another great resource for everyone is our local rideshare agencies, and that's in the eTRIP guidebook. I know that there are active rideshare agencies in every one of the regions, and they all have different types of incentives. Some of them give away fairly significant monetary incentives. I know in Fresno County, because of Measure C that was passed by the voters, they have a whole variety of things that they're doing, but one of them is that they give away $1,000 every month to someone who carpools at least twice a week. And you just sign up, go to valleyrides.org, and you can sign up and you can win $1,000. We've actually had some people here in the office who have won $1,000. They're now going into, I believe, their third year with that. Yeah, third year. So, and there are similar things. I know it's Rideshare Week. Both the North and the South have other things going on afterwards. If you have specific questions, Brenda or Anthony can plug you into the activities going on in the regions. With that, the other thing that I love to tell people is I know my audience. I like to think I know my audience, and I think that one of the key things when presenting or when talking to people is understand and be respectful of where they are at. And just because we are ahead of schedule doesn't mean I'm going to fill an additional 50 minutes just wasting your time. We've said everything that we need to say. So now I'm going to open it up from questions. I'm going to rotate back and forth through the regions, both questions and feedback. Again, you guys were the first time we've done this. What would you like to see more of? What did you feel was not important? And questions about what we've presented. I'm going to rotate through a couple times. I'll start in Fresno, then I'll go to Modesto, Bakersfield, and then I'll rotate through again. Let's start in Fresno, right over here, man in the red shirt, and I will repeat the questions so you guys can hear them.